Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Fitter and Faster Coaches Corner. As always, I'm your host, Mike Murray. Today, we have a special college coaches program. Two of the best coaches in the country are with me today. And I'm going to start out by introducing one of my former teammates and an athlete that I grew up with. And these two coaches were actually teammates at Kenyon College when they swam as collegians. And I'd like to introduce everybody to Danny Corman. How are you, Danny?
I'm good. That was my cat, Kip. He will probably make multiple appearances. I apologize. Loves camera time. He's learned Zoom very much over the past 2 years.
Fantastic. And Danny, where are you coming to us from today?
I am currently at home in Oakland, California. I'm coaching at Cal Berkeley now, which has been an awesome experience. I'm in year 3, so lots of roller coaster experiences thanks to COVID, but it's been a great experience and learning a lot while I'm here. So that's where I am today.
And we are also joined today with a very special guest, your college teammate, Abby Bretthauer from Princeton University. Abby, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Season's going well so far for Princeton. What are you guys most excited about here in the second half of 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I think the season's off to a great start and the guys are swimming well and diving well. And we have our dual meet with Harvard and Yale this weekend, and then Ivies and ECACs, which are our championships, and then fingers crossed for some kids moving on to NCAAs.
It's fantastic. Ivy League swimming, always exciting to see those kids coming up and competing at NCAAs and getting into the mix. Both of you coach at 2 of the premier academic institutions in the United States. That presents a lot of great marketing for you, but it can also be a challenge. What are one of the things that you try to do in terms of recruiting when you talk to parents and athletes and club coaches and high school coaches to demystify maybe some of the stigma that athletes have about, oh my gosh, I'd love to go to Princeton or I'd love to go to Cal, but academically, I'm not quite there yet. Abby, what are some ways that you start that conversation with parents?
Yeah, so I will say this is my first year at Princeton, so I've been here for half of a recruiting cycle so far. I think the biggest thing is there's this perception that to be at a school like Princeton or Cal, you have to be perfect, and that's not the case. Swimmers and divers spend a lot of their time outside of school doing their sport, and most of them have other interests. And so it's like a well-rounded applicant who excels in numerous areas is going to be far more successful than someone who just has perfect SAT scores or perfect GPA. Obviously, there are standards, so we can't just be like, oh, we could take anybody. But I think that's a big part of it, and just explaining how it all works once you get here as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that's such a good sound clip right there for parents to understand that it's their responsibility as parents and athletes to ask important questions. And if you're not sure what those important questions are, simply say to the college coach, we really have zero experience in this and we need to lean into you a little bit. And I think for the most part, at the level that you both are at, the coaching staffs are going to be incredibly honest. Danny, is that something that you experience working at Cal? And when many of us think of Cal, especially as athletes and parents, we think of, the premier women's swimming school over the last few decades, along with Stanford and others. And now we see some East Coast schools emerging. But how do you start that conversation with parents?
Yeah, I would say similar to what Abby just referenced. I think it's really about, as coaches, being transparent about what our program is about and what are our values and what are we ideally looking for in, an athlete. And I think it's become a little trickier with the early recruiting, with the idea that, honestly, like, you shouldn't be coming to college the same person you are as a, junior in high school. You should be growing and evolving. And so I think really using the process to navigate that is really important to make sure, like, once that person arrives at Cal, like, they are ready and prepared for what's to come. And that's where I think them asking questions and just staying in constant communication is what's most important, to be able to talk about, the importance of academics, the important, like, what does our program look like? And then again, what are the opportunities you're going to have here outside of those 2 arenas? Because I think it's a very holistic experience. You're not just going to go to school and come to practice. Like, there's a lot of other things that play into your experience. And, them coming in, understanding those atmospheric things that are going to be a part of their life, I think is what's most important and what we found makes the experience most successful for those that are at Cal.
Sure. And it can be a very challenging and anxiety ridden process. As both of you know, former head coaches at different institutions as you moved along in your careers. Abby, what I'm interested in knowing is when you have a parent and athlete who are looking to try to fit in to a Division I school, what should the things that they be looking for from a performance standpoint on whether or not they have a chance at competing in your program? A lot of college coaches have the athletes look at the conference top times. How do you help your prospective recruits use some sort of barometrics to take a look at where they should be?
Yeah, I mean, I think top times are great. It gives you a good idea of where you're going to fit. Obviously, if you're scoring top 8 in a conference meet in 3 events, that's going to make you pretty valuable to any team. And then looking at where the team is, right? So recruiting in the top end of a conference might be a little bit different than the bottom end of a conference, and just understanding those experiences as well. You know, if you come in to a school like Princeton and you're 6th on the depth chart, that's a really good place to be, but it also means maybe you could look at a different school and be 2nd on the depth chart. And how does that affect your recruiting in terms of relay experiences and, you know, travel meets and those kind of things? And I think some of it's just sorting out what you want your experience to be. Obviously, every team has a range of swimmers. You know, you have your top tier kids, and then you have a middle group, and then you have a bottom group, and that bottom group might be the top group at another team. And so it's kind of figuring out what you want from your experience, and how does the academic factor, the student life, and outside of the pool, how does swimming factor in, and how do you find the best fit of all 3 of those things, I think is important. And knowing the specifics about the school, you know, like understanding what makes Princeton different than some of our Ivy League, you know, competitors. And there are differences between the schools. And I think that's important, not just, oh, I want to go to an Ivy. Like what makes us stand out to you, I think is helpful for them to know.
Absolutely. And Danny, when we hear Abby talk a lot about fitting into the atmosphere at Princeton, fitting into the team culture there, understanding, you know, what athletes might be graduating, what event needs, what distance needs they have from the 50 to the mile. When you look at a Power 5 conference, I know there's a lot of similarities, but Cal is always going to be in the conversation of competing for a national title. So how do you mitigate some of those conversations when you have these athletes and parents asking you those tough questions?
I mean, it's a similar approach to what Abby said. I do think like we definitely share top times, and for us, it might be, all right, we're really looking for those, you know, conference finalists, but also, are you going to be a scorer at NC2As? That's going to be a next level piece, I would say, to our puzzle. But again, they don't have to necessarily come in with those times. I think some of the more successful Cal legends you hear about are coming in very elite, but they've also improved at Cal. So we're going to look at their trajectory over their high school years and really make sure. I mean, this is hard. Like, it's not going to be an easy process, and you know, we're really looking for those willing to do the work and not come in and expect, you know, to be number 1 all the time. Like, we really value those that are up for a challenge and really want that to be a part of their experience. So yes, times are a very important piece to that, you know, figuring out who's going to be the best fit for us. But I also think there's other aspects and attributes to somebody that we're really going to look for more in the character area. That's going to allow us to know if this is going to be the best place for them, and for them to know about us again, so they can figure out if it's best for them as well.
That's a great segue because you mentioned character, and you know, both you and Abby did a wonderful job of explaining the X's and O's parts of what's so important about the recruiting process. You were also very fortunate to both be teammates in a team culture that was driven so much towards success at the collegiate level. When you were at Kenyon, you both won multiple NCAA Division III championships. Danny, at Cal, one of the things that Terry's been known for throughout her career is really having the ability to connect with the athletes, connect with them on a different level that's separate from swimming. What are some of the things from a character standpoint that maybe Terry is telling you or the staff that you're interested in when looking at prospective team members for the next season?
Yeah, I think there's some bigger things and then little things that you can pick out with each person. But again, character wise, I really think we are looking for those that appreciate a challenge. And, you know, we're going to ask them questions of, if your coach were to describe you, what do you think they would say? and then talk to their coach and have their coach describe them and see like, is there that relationship there already, to see what character things might pop up that are important. Again, are they willing to talk about, everybody has great moments, but are they willing to maybe tap into areas they need to improve in? Because that's going to be something that's going to be a big part of their experience at Cal is, we're gonna motivate you and we're gonna pump you up, but we also are going to be coaches that, are there to hold you accountable. And so are you somebody that can accept that and understand that it's coming from a place of, we call it API, like assume positive intent, and know that it's for the benefit of the team and for you. And so are they somebody, again, that welcomes that? And again, do they have big dreams? Like, I would rather have a recruit tell me they have a crazy goal at that time. Like, they might not be finalists at the Olympic trials, but if they're telling me within the next cycle, like that's a goal they have, that excites me, instead of, oh, I want to come in and, maybe stay where they are. Because then I think that's where I can tap into talking about what our process looks like. Something I was going to maybe tap into later with some of the questions you sent was, the idea of like, we are a very process oriented program. And so how can we tap into questions where we're hearing experiences and asking like, what's a success you've had as an athlete? And what stories do they come up with? I think you can learn a lot about their character just in the stories they tell of themselves, because that's a way you're getting to learn what they value and how they view themselves as well.
That's great. Understanding value systems of your athletes will certainly help you make some connections with them. And Abby, one of the greatest things I think about a school like Princeton is how multi-talented the athletes who are coming into your program, and not just from a talent level, but you're getting a lot of student athletes that are interested in so many different things. So what have you found to be really exciting as a coach working with athletes like that? And what are you guys looking for in terms of character with the men that are coming into the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think both Danny and I have been really lucky to coach at a number of elite academic institutions, and I think that's something that we both respond to, and really we enjoy the student athletes that have other interests. And I love, like the other day, I learned that one of my kids runs, like he's like the CEO of an electric boat company, and they have like it's a startup, and I had no idea, because it's just one of the things that they do. And so I think, like hearing that stuff is super exciting. And I think if you look at the program in the last 3 years since Matt, the head coach, has taken over, like the recruiting has gotten a little bit more specific in terms of athletic talent. And so it's looking for kids who want to come in and be at the number one institution in the country, and who want to take the program to the next level, and who want to do that well, doing these other amazing things outside the pool. So, we have a kid who's like in the stand-up group, and so the guys are going to that. Like, they're taking, one of the kids the other day said he's taking a dance class, and it was one of the coolest things he's done. And so I think that piece of it, of like these kids that are great students with really big swimming goals, and we have, international students that are talking about going to represent their countries, and then they're doing internships, with Google or Facebook or, other things that I know nothing about because they're so far beyond me. But I just love listening to them talk about that, and then also seeing what they're able to do in the pool.
That's great. And it must be fascinating as coaches at both places that you're at to just see these kids flourish as they go through your programs, and super rewarding, and certainly something that I think a lot of young coaches who watch this podcast every week are excited about is your development and the unique development that you both had, and the unique journey that you both had. One of the things that I'm very proud of being on here with the two of you is that after I transferred from Rutgers, when the men's team was eliminated, we're all Division III athletes, former Division III athletes who have all gone on to coach and had some success, and been very fortunate to call this life a career, and a career in this life. So Abby, I want to start with you and your initial steps towards taking your journey of coaching.
Yeah. So my time at Kenyon shaped me as a human in ways that I can't even begin to put into words. And I think I always was someone who was pretty sure I wasn't going to have my own family. And I saw the way that my coaches affected me. And I was like, if I can be that person to one person, my life will have made a difference. And I think a lot of times when people have their own children, like that's how they like shape the world. And so I look at the kids that I've coached as my kids. And I think like my coaches had such an impact on me that I wanted to do that. And I started out as a D3 assistant coach in the NESCAC. And then I was with the Columbia Women's Program for 6 years because I thought I should learn how to coach women. I was a D3 head coach. I was a D3 associate head coach. And now I'm back to an Ivy League assistant of a men's program. So not maybe the path that a lot of people would predict or chart out for themselves, certainly not exactly what I had planned, but I'm really proud of what I've done and I'm really happy about it. And I am like grateful for people like Danny in my life who, when I called and I said like, I have this opportunity, what do you think? And she's like, yeah, that would be amazing. You'd be so good at that. And, you know, because I think a lot of people question like, but you were a head coach and then you step back from that. And why would you ever do that? And like, you're a female and you want to coach men and why would you want to do that? So I think it's maybe not the most, you know, typical. I don't know if there is such a thing in coaching. But yeah, like I am happy 97% of the time and stressed, you know, the other 3%. But yeah, I think that's great. And I think, you know, for me, I think like the people that I've met along the way have been really important. You know, like Danny and I were talking the other day and I was like, I met you as a recruit and now we're still like best friends and that's amazing. And like, I don't know. I don't know if either one of us would have said that, you know, 20 plus years ago, and here we are. So it's cool.
That's such a great story. And Abby, talk to me a little bit about having patience with your own process of development, because as young coaches, I think we all think like, I'm going to take this step and then I'm going to elevate to this step and I'm just going to keep on going. And the path is certainly not a linear one. And it's something that we have in common with our athletes, right? We're on a journey that has a lot of ups and downs. So you've been to a lot of different places. You've had great success everywhere you've been. And certainly we've all had some failures along the way, but talk about how you kept a sense of patience with the process of developing as a coach.
Yeah, I think I was really lucky in my second job. I was working with Diana Caskey at Columbia with their women's program, and I was there for 6 years. You know, I was there for all of my 20s. And if you had asked me when I first started, I would have said 2 or 3 years and then I'm out. And I applied for some other jobs and they just, you know, weren't the right time. They weren't the right fit. And I was really lucky to be in a place that allowed me to survive, you know, financially, and to learn a ton and like to think about next steps. And then I had the opportunity to go down to Virginia, the University of Mary Washington, which is a small Division III school, and spent 8 years as a head coach there and had some great experiences. And, you know, that was when Danny was at MIT. So it was great because we'd see each other at NCAAs and like, I would be there with, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 kids and she'd be there with the whole team. But like, it was great because, you know, I could watch her kids and cheer for them. She would support our kids. And I think like those things help you, like those relationships help you to be patient. You know, it's the same thing if you're a club swimmer, like there's going to be days that you're not having it and your teammates are the ones that kind of pick you up and like help you through. And it's the same thing in coaching. Like you are, if you're lucky, and I've been very lucky, like I've surrounded myself with great people. And, you know, like my college coach is one of my best friends. Like he was 26 when he coached us. He was an interim head coach my senior year, and he is a head coach at Bates College up in Maine. And Danny and I have worked camps with him for years. And like, you know, those relationships have been incredibly important to me. And then being, like I said, being able to call people and say like, what do you think about this? You know, I think a lot of people were surprised when I left a head coaching job to like become an associate head coach. But again, the opportunity to work with different people who I really respect and, you know, have a team that I think is set up to do some really special things this year. You know, we missed the last 2 NCAAs in Division III, so didn't get to see the results of that work. But I think just trusting yourself and trusting yourself to know what's right, even if it's not what everyone else says is right, is important. And I think the only reason I trust myself is because I have really good people in my corner helping me do that.
So key in just navigating this lifestyle, right? Because it's a different lifestyle than many of your college teammates that go on and continue in all facets of professional life that are so different from coaching. So it's so important to have those key people in your corner. Danny, you know, I have to tell you, I have always been so proud, you know, just growing up together and swimming together. And you are always super competitive as an athlete. And it's something that I saw even when we were really young, but incredibly proud to see your development over the years. And, you know, there's a group of us from the Adirondack LSC that are all in coaching at some level right now. And it's kind of neat. There's so many of us, to be honest. But one of the things that I was so excited about your development is when you were at MIT, the program was solid and then it exploded. And it was energy, passion, enthusiasm. Talk about where you developed some of those skills. And I asked you a question earlier about what did you learn early on in your career that maybe flipped the switch and changed your philosophy?
Lots of questions there. Big.
Yeah.
I would say, like, thinking back to what like Abby said, I think obviously a lot of it, is going to stem from my career as a college athlete. Of course, Adirondack swimming, got it going. But I would say that like my club swimming experiences, we had a lot of clubs where we grew up, Mike, and when we came together as an Adirondack team, like it was just really fun to have that experience and to meet other people. And so I think that's what spurred my desire to swim in college. And again, it becomes your chosen family. And, I think keeping that in mind is something that's really driven me in my positions. I will say too, I think in my coaching, I learned early on that I really do value, the academic rigor of being a college student in addition to elite swimming. And those two things have, I would say those are the two kind of non-negotiables in my career path, just because I think I connect most with those type of athletes. And so I will say, like, when I got the opportunity to lead MIT, it was something at the moment, I'm probably called Abby 10 times, like, do I do this? Do I do this? Because I was super nervous. And I will say, I don't think you ever feel ready for something like that. But it's your support system, and it's just tapping into who you truly are and just take that into that position wherever you are. And so at MIT, for me, it was just really excited. I was coming off of being at Yale with just the women's program. So similar to what Abby said, I was excited again to coach a combined program. I'd done that at Johns Hopkins. And I would say, like, there is where I learned a great deal of, what it's like to be an elite level team at Division III at a very academic institution. And George Kennedy was someone who was amazing to learn from, not just the X's and O's, but really like what it's like to be a dad. And he was going through his daughter's like senior year of high school. And so it was this balance of, giving me responsibility as the assistant and then seeing him be able to, balance those other areas of his life with being an elite level coach was something that I really, really try to tap into, even though I don't have the family like George did, or does. I don't. But with that in mind, like Abby said, like, these were my kids. And so when I got to MIT, like, I wanted them to be able to express themselves and be authentic. I mean, they're incredibly unique individuals who are incredibly intelligent. So I think giving them the space to be an athlete and have fun with the sport of swimming and, have an outlet from being in class or sleeping 4 hours last night or, whatever they needed. Like, I wanted swimming to be a fun, safe place for them. And again, it was a place I knew as well, like, if they weren't improving, they weren't going to keep swimming. Like, they have so many other opportunities. So it was, for me, it was a challenge of like, how do I keep this interesting and fun, but also like they need to keep getting better or else they're going to easily find something else to spend their time doing. And so again, that's where like I, as a coach, really had to connect with them and learn like what's motivating you and why are you here, and making sure they could answer those questions as well. And I think my ability to communicate to them why I was there and for them to be able to communicate why they were there is something that really, I learned along the way, because it's going to be, it's going to change. It's a fluid thing sometimes. But taking it day by day. And again, I think at MIT, it was just, they want to be great at whatever they do. And if I could allow that to happen in the pool, like, they were going to be excited about practice and be excited about meets. And that's something that I found really fun and something that I took pride in, as the head coach there, and just have really tried to carry through.
It's fantastic. And the journey is continuing, right? We're all still learning in the positions that we're in. And, it's exciting to see the things that we've learned along the way and how we're constantly evolving. Abby, some of the athletes that you've had have had incredible success over the last couple of years. As a coach, whether it's men or women, there are days and there are months where we could be in a slump, and we're working with athletes who might be in a slump. And one of the things that's been an important part of Coach's Corner this year is learning to connect to athletes when they're struggling, when maybe we've had a couple bad dual meets in a row, or maybe our mid-season meet wasn't where we wanted it to be. Maybe we're even at the point where we're questioning why we're still swimming. We've all been there with an athlete. Maybe we've been there ourselves. What are some strategies that you've used over the years to help that athlete get through those tough moments?
Yeah, I mean, I think swimming and diving are really hard sports. And it, both of them require so much, so much for so little in some ways, like the hours and the training and the time commitment. And then it comes down to like one dive or one breath, it's so close. And I think just being able to like say, sometimes swimming is really hard and that's okay, like acknowledging that and not just being like, everything's fine, we're all fine, like we're all fine, and creating, like Danny said, like a place where they feel safe enough to express those emotions and be frustrated and be vulnerable. And I think that starts with us as coaches being vulnerable and saying things and just being very authentic and true to who we are. I think, the last 2.5 years have been really hard with COVID. 2 years, I don't even know how long it's been. And just like constantly getting things thrown at you and having a season and not having a season and missing NCAAs and, kids not having final career ending meets. And, I'm still talking to some of the kids from Tufts that are struggling with that. They thought they were going to end in one way and it didn't go that way. And then, like I think back on my college career and my teammates that thought things were going to go one way and didn't go that way. And, like using your own experiences, I think is really important. Being vulnerable is really important. And then I think, like from a coaching perspective, like having the people that you can lean on when you're struggling is really important, and knowing who those people are. Like something that Danny does that's great and I appreciate as a friend of hers is like she's good at like sending little pick-me-ups, like she sent me a letter the other day and it had a little card, which is in my office. And like it's just little things
That
like
sounds
that.
like Danny Corman.
Yeah. And they mean the world, right? Like it's just something to remind you, like, A, it's a good reminder, but B, it's like a reminder that you have someone in your corner. And I think like we had a volunteer assistant at Tufts, Eva Green, who swam at Cal, and she had, I don't know where they are, my desk is a mess right now, but she had little cards that she would hand out to the kids that she got from Cal. And so like I've started doing that. So if I see a kid that's like maybe, looking a little down, just being like, hey, you okay? Like asking, that's a good start. And then, just like a note in the locker or something, because it gives them the ability to come in and be like, yeah, like I'm not okay. Like it's about so much more than swimming. Swimming is the vehicle that connects us, but it's not the only thing that they are. And it's, I think you said it at the beginning, like one of the things that Terry is known for is like connecting with her swimmers. I think that's why Danny is great at Cal, because that's something she's really good at. I think that's something that I pride myself on and work really, really hard on. And like you said, that's not always the case, but it's nice when you have other people that model that for you and you get to see that and be like, oh yeah, like that's a good reminder to me. Like getting a piece of mail was really nice. So I sent a piece of mail to someone else because it made me feel so much better. I was like, that was really like, I didn't even know I needed it that badly. And then I got it and I was like, I did need that. So.
Yeah, it's great to feel that somebody else is meeting you in your space, right? When you come to practice and maybe things aren't going well, if you have a coach there that's willing to meet you in your space, I think that goes a long way. And Danny, is that something that maybe you learned as an athlete at Kenyon with Jim and Jess Book at the time? I think was that some skill, were those some skills that maybe you started to see and develop as a student athlete? Because I remember when you raced, it's all in or nothing. Like it was competition time. So I'm sure you had to learn some of those tough lessons in college, especially competing at a place like Kenyon, where the expectation is, hey, we've got this tradition behind us. If we don't repeat, it's like end of times. So how did those coaches help you maybe develop some of these skills that you'd use later on?
Yeah, I think like Coach was great at it. Jess was great. I mean, at the time, Amy Williams was on our staff as well, just helping out. She's now the athletic director at Worcester. And I think she, for me, was a pivotal point in my career. I was a gamer. I hated practice. I was awful in practice. You saw these training charts and I was like at the end of the lane. I had to be in the sprint group, even though I was 200 flyer because I just couldn't do it. Um, and so, in that regard, I think it was just, I had to find my strengths and tap into those. And I knew it was racing, and I knew that that's what really brought value to the program. And like Abby said, like the coaching staff gave me the space to like do what I needed to do to be good, and not, they would push me, don't get me wrong, like that's part of the process as well. And I think, but that's what I've learned too, is like knowing when to push and when to give a little bit. And also I think they did a great job for me of kind of reframing what fast swimming meant. Again, I like to make it more of a game. So like I wasn't good if we did pace stuff and I knew a time. Like Amy was great. She's like, just count your strokes and I'll kind of give you, like, if you're way off, we'll talk about it. If not, you just focus on your strokes, because in a race, you can control your strokes. You don't know what your time is. And so for me, I think it was super helpful for me to just, again, tap into what I could control, and then know my strengths and develop those. And then be pushed in the areas that I needed, growth in, but also knowing, again, like, what are my strengths and how can I, amplify those. And I think that's something I've tried to do with my current athletes. We want to always keep improving. That's a part of the process. But again, don't spend so much time on your weaknesses and forget your strengths. And then you kind of meet in the middle as average. Like, how can we amplify your strengths and make those your weapon? And then, hey, let's work on this other stuff, of course, because overall that'll improve you. But hey, what are we good at? What's our role? And like really, really, really tap into that and make that what you're about, I think is something I really learned at Kenyon, and I've been able to carry through here. And again, I was given the space to be able to do that, and not, I will say, like, I came in after Abby. So I was a recruit when she was there and she was a 200 flyer. And then I came in, and I appreciated at Kenyon, like, she was their top 200 flyer. And then they didn't make me be the next Abby. Like, Kenyon gave me the space to do what I was going to do. And I think that allowed me to be my best. And I think that's a big message we definitely try and give here at Cal, is we're not trying to make everybody the next Natalie or the next Dana or the next Missy or anything like that. Like, be your authentic self. But again, with the idea that we're going to model some things after what we've been successful in, and then amplify your strengths.
Well, that's fantastic, and certainly a cornerstone of what makes both of you outstanding coaches. I want to tap into that a little bit, Danny, because you mentioned something earlier. You said API. And as coaches, we have to have some tough conversations with our athletes a lot of times. At Princeton, Abby, you're going to have those tough conversations about who's going to be on Ivy League relays. And Danny, at Cal, you're talking about who's going to be on the A relays and NCAAs. And so it gets to be a challenge when you have those tough conversations. So Danny, talk to me about what your API means in your team culture at Cal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we'll bump up against every day. You're going to have challenges, and that's where I would say, like you said, Terry does a great job with connection of the athletes. Clear and honest conversations is something that we really, really, we spend intentional time on it. It's not something we just talk about, oh, you have to do it. Like, you need skills to be able to do it in a way that is not going to crumble your team culture. So we really do spend intentional time either reading books or listening to podcasts, and then we have workshops on them. Role play, like, we do all of those things. So we feel like the team is skilled enough to be handling those things in a way that it is coming from a place of positive intent. And again, it's going to always center around what are our team's goals and values. But if someone on the team is holding you accountable and maybe calling you out for something that's not in alignment with, what we've talked about, like, you need to understand that that individual is coming to you with a place of everyone's best interest and your best interest in mind, not just, hey, I don't like you, I'm going to call you out. Like, this is coming from a place where we want to be positive, and it's for us to grow. And that's where, again, we don't shy away from those tough conversations. We want the girls to be skilled in those for, time at Cal, but life in general. And that's where, like, that API and assuming positive intent is something that we really, really hone in on to keep our culture in a positive direction.
Outstanding. I love that API, and we're going to steal it at Victor Swim Club for till the end of time. We are going to use that. So thank you very much. Abby, when you're having those conversations at Princeton, I know it's probably from a similar standpoint, but you have athletes who are coming from such different backgrounds, and they get to be on a big time Division I team. What are those conversations like heading into Ivies when maybe you have to make a couple tough decisions about selection?
Yes, so that's currently right where we are. And I think similarly, I think if you have those relationships with your student athletes, you have your relationships within the coaching staff, you can have those conversations because they're not out of the blue, right? Like it's something that we've been talking about since before. Like I think this team that I'm currently working with has been talking about this for the last 18 months. The work that Doug Lennox, who is my predecessor, and Matt did last year during COVID, we didn't have a season, we didn't have people on campus. The work that they did, people are like, oh, Abby, what's going on at Princeton? I'm like, literally, they spent last year on Zoom making this team so much better. And they had a lot of those conversations. They did a lot of the stuff, like Danny said, like the books and the podcasts and the conversations. And I'll tell you what, like Zooms are hard. Zooms with, 20 to 30, 18 to 22-year-old men are very quiet. And so I credit Doug and Matt a lot with the work that they did last year to prep it, because I kind of walked in and the team was already in a place where they could have those hard conversations. I think COVID did us a lot of favors in that we had a lot of student athletes take gap years. And so our leadership is very much diverse around the whole team. So we have a senior diver captain who should have graduated last year. He took a gap year. Our swimming captain is a junior. He should have been a senior this year. So, we have sophomores that should have been juniors. So like leadership is all over the place. And I think they're able to have the conversations with each other. And like, they have really big goals and they know to reach them. They have to hold each other accountable. And that's huge. And I think the same thing, it was the same at Kenyon. Like we had roles and we knew what they were. And, it was like, I was never going to be on a relay. And that was really disappointing to me, but I couldn't sprint and it made sense. As much as I would have killed to be on a relay at Kenyon, that wasn't my role. I was going to be the best 200 backstroker that I could be. And I was going to try and score points in my other events. And that was where I wanted to be. And I think, that taught me that as a swimmer. And I had coaches that had hard conversations and I had teammates that had hard conversations, and have tried to create, again, like an atmosphere where you can continue that as a coach so the team can do those things as well.
That's outstanding to fall back on personal experience and be able to relate that to your athletes, because I think a lot of times, and I certainly did this as a swimmer, you forget that your coaches swam, so it's good to remind them sometimes that we have that shared experience. One of the things that I'm hopeful for in this house and that we're pushing for in this house is more female coaches. And you guys have done an exceptional job in your career getting to the places where you are now. We're seeing so many more female coaches begin to get elevated to those great positions. So what are some pieces of advice that you both can share about that experience? It's important to us here at Coach's Corner that we continue to help female coaches create opportunities for them and create awareness, right? I think there's probably so many great minds in the minds of athletes who are swimming right now, both in club and college, that have the ability to be tremendous coaches. Talk about maybe your unique experience and some of the things that you have to consider as a woman going through this journey.
Yeah, you can take that one, Danny.
Okay, thanks. I would say overall message is to be your authentic self. I think there's obviously, they can say these tendencies are more male dominated and these are female dominated. And, I think if you're just true to yourself, you're going to be your best coach. I think, and I'll be honest, talk about a shared experience. I think a little bit when I got at Cal, I fell into that trap of I want to be just like Terry. She is the epitome of what it is to be a elite female head coach, right? Head coach of the Olympic team, most NCAA titles, all this sort of stuff. And she thankfully was the one who told me I don't want you to be Terry 2.0, be your best self. And, honestly, that I'm still learning how to do that. I think, and every situation is going to be different. But I would say if coaching is something somebody wants to do, it's an awesome way to be a teacher. and to make an impact in community, and stay connected if relationships are important to you. I think there's just a lot of different things that you can tap into as a coach, and just figuring out what are those things that really, I don't know, give you fulfillment in coaching, and make those what you're about. Don't try and be like anybody else. Because I think that's where you're going to find that vulnerability and that connection with your athletes. And again, if you have those shared experiences with them, you're going to be a better coach for them. I don't think it's necessarily all about, you have to know the latest and newest, technology that's going to make you go faster. Because we don't do a lot of that here, I'll be honest. We're more about being creative and thinking outside the box, and like tapping into those relationships. And Abby and I collaborate on ideas, and I bring some stuff that she does at Princeton. And, I think it's just being able to have those relationships. But overall, I would say, like, figure out what makes you tick, and then find a way to implement that as being a coach, and you're going to be the best coach you can. And that's what you need.
I love how you're keeping it simple, because, there's a lot of women coaches out there that are probably looking for, like, well, how did you get your start? How did you overcome some of these obstacles? And I think for you, Danny, it's very authentic. Like, you just made a decision that you were going to do it, and you did it. Abby, what was your experience like?
Yeah, I think similarly, like, I would say I totally agree with everything Danny just said. Like, know who you are as a person, be flexible and willing to grow. And I think, like, the biggest thing I'll say is, like, find your people and keep them close. All of my best friends are coaches, and some of them are female, some of them are male. Like, I feel super blessed to work with Matt here at Princeton. Like, the way that I got this job was not, like, expected at all. But, like, how lucky am I to work for a male who wanted a female to work with a men's program, who sought that out, who saw the importance in that, like, that for me is huge. Like, it doesn't happen very often. And I feel so privileged, like, the people that I've worked for have all appreciated me as both a coach and a female coach. And I think some people are like, oh, like, I'm just a coach. And it's true, but as a female, you're going to experience different things in this profession. And there are times you walk in the pool deck and there's not many of you, standing on deck at Ivies or NESCACs. Like, if you're at the men's meet, there's 8 women, and that's really, it's a different experience. And I think, like, on the flip side of that, like, having 2 strong female leaders like Cal does, like, that's incredible too. Like, there's just some really important things that come out of it. And I think, if you can find your network and create it. And I think both Danny and I have had great mentors, and then because of that, aim to be good mentors to people younger than us. Like, we both do the CSCA mentoring program, like, we have connections with people who are older than us that have helped us. We have people, contemporaries that, like, we're friends with. And then we have people that are younger that, like, hopefully we're helping to grow the profession for females and give them outlets and make it okay to say, like, man, today was really hard, and be like, yeah, that's normal, and, like, that doesn't mean it has to be all females, only supporting females. Like, that's part of it. But I think, like, Danny and I both love what we do and feel really lucky that this is what we get to do most of the time, even when it's overwhelming and hard, and the days that you're like, what am I doing? Like, when it comes down to it, we've been in it for 15, 20 years now. Like, we clearly enjoy what we do. We could have left and we haven't. And I think, I look at some of the younger people in coaching, like men and women, like, we have a great volunteer here, and I hope he sticks with it, like, because he's good. And I watch him interact with our guys, and I'm like, man, like, they love him. They love Austin. Like, it's great to see that. And it's fun to be like, oh yeah, remember when it was like our first year, and remember how exciting everything was? Like, ordering lunches was the best thing ever. Sometimes I have to remind myself of that, because, like, at 41, I didn't know that I'd be still ordering lunches, but like, the kids say thank you, and it really makes a difference. So I don't know, be yourself and find your people.
Absolutely. And the 2 of you and the leadership that you share is going a long way. And I certainly am looking for ideas of how to make you visible assets and a part of ASCA. So, we're changing ASCA around. It's a new place, and I think you guys could both be super helpful, and I'll definitely reach out to you both for that. The last question I want to ask you all is, Division III was an incredible part of our experience and our journey as coaches. Even though my stepdaughter is at Denison. I will I will ask you both why the Division III experience was important to you. For me, it was, I transferred from a Division I school, and for me, it was, okay, now I have the opportunity to be an All-American, which I probably wouldn't have had. And I got to rock climb and do everything in the Adirondack Mountains that I never would have been able to do swimming Division I. I got to travel. I got to do internships. And I still got to go a lot faster as an athlete. So let's start with you, Danny, and then Abby will finish up with you.
I mean, I think similarly. I think, I looked at some Division I schools. I wasn't fast enough out of high school to be at an elite like Cal level school. So I just, again, I'm fortunate. I had people in my life that allowed me the space to kind of look at different schools. I looked at Denison, I looked at Kenyon. I looked at, I'm trying to think where I went, like Villanova, Lehigh. Like I looked at some other Division I schools too. But again, I think overall for me, like once I stepped foot on campus, I was like, when am I ever gonna like get an opportunity to be in rural Ohio? And this team, like it just felt like family, like right away. And so I think, and they were successful in swimming. So like I just kind of had, and I think that's where I've kind of taken my coaching too, is like I had some things that I was like, these are kind of my non-negotiables. And where do I feel the most at home? And for me, it was at Kenyon where I could have all these different experiences. I didn't know what I wanted to study, and I had the opportunity to do liberal arts. So like it just kind of like checked a lot of the boxes in the bigger picture. And then again, overall, I think it was just the fit and the people. And again, I could test, like I'm still friends with Abby 20 years later, and a lot of the Kenyon coaches I still keep in contact with. So it was just, for me, yes, fast swimming was important, and yes, academics were important, but I think ultimately the people were what really drew me to that D3 experience, and I could be an elite level national champion there.
And one heck of a great degree coming
Yes.
out of Kenyon College. Abby, how about you?
Yeah, the same thing. I had a very weird list of schools. I grew up in New England, so the Ivies were on my list. Syracuse was on my list, and Kenyon was on my list because my parents are from Ohio, and they kept pushing me towards it. I've been on campus twice in the summer, and I was like, never going to school here. This place is terrible. And they forced me to go on a visit, and I went in April of my senior year, and I called my mom within 10 minutes of being there, and I was like, I'm going to school here. And it was the people. It was meeting the people that were going to be my teammates and my best friends, and the coaches, and, Jim Steen sold me on the fact that I looked good in purple, and orange was not a great color for me. So here I am struggling to wear orange. But yeah, I wanted to be great, and I wasn't good enough to be great at the D1 level. And so ultimately it came down to like, where can I do all the things that I want to do and do them at to the best of my ability. And like, it was cool getting calls, being like, oh, we're at NCAAs. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like that sounds like something I would like to do. And like, they're clearly, again, the people part of it, like they're clearly my people, because so many people that we swam with went into coaching. Like we have so many similarities still, and it's really fun to like, I mean, D3 NCAAs is like a Kenyon family reunion, and it's not even necessarily people that you swam with. It's just people who had the same experience and had that shared experience. And I think that's something that I always like am jealous of when I see like a lot of Cal stuff, is like that family experience that they have. And like, it could be someone who graduated in 1982 and someone who graduated in 2002 and someone who graduated in 2020, and they have that shared experience. And I think that's what Kenyon had and sold me on it, and what we're trying to create here. And I think it exists because there was, the same coaches for years and years. So now that we're new coaching staff, trying to continue that through.
Yeah, you really hit on that, and feeling like a part of that school's family. We were fortunate for our kids to have that at NC State and at Denison, and it goes a long way. I mean, that they travel together, they tailgate before the meets. It's really a unique experience. But here we are, 3 coaches 20 years later, and all coming from Division III backgrounds. So parents, you definitely got to put some of those schools on your list, and your student athletes might be better off for it in the end. Danny, what I want you to do is I want you to hold up that Adirondack LSC 94 shirt, because that was a heck of a good year. I think I might have won a 50 fly or something at zones that year. That was a long course meet. So yeah, I was 13, maybe something around there, but It's been super fun to watch you have success. And Abby, it's great to finally meet you. Certainly seen you around, and really looking forward to sharing this episode next week with everybody. And ladies, good luck to you and your season. Feels like we're almost in a normal competitive championship year. So I wish you guys all the best of luck. And how can people get a hold of you if they want to ask questions or they're interested in maybe learning more about your experience?
Yeah, I mean, my info is all on the Cal website, so feel free. Best way is probably email, but my email should be on there. If not, it's just DM and then my last name Corman at berkeley.edu. So happy to help.
Awesome.
I mean, I was going to give my cell phone number to everyone, but I guess I'll just go with email as well. My email is on the Princeton site, and it's just my first name dot last name at princeton.edu. And like, I don't want to speak for Danny, but like, I am happy to talk to anyone who has questions, whether it be about like college coaching or the college recruiting process. Like, I think we both very much believe that like this is should be the best experience of your life, like when you're looking at colleges and swimming in college, and like anything that we can do to help. I will speak for Danny a little bit. Anything that we can do to help, we're happy to help.
Yeah, and I will give a plug. I have had multiple coaches I've never met reach out and just ask questions, and I think that's the best way you're going to learn. So like Abby was saying, like find your people. Like we're happy to help, and if we can be someone's person, like I think that's where I'll speak for you, Abby. We are both, I would say, more than willing to either help you figure out or answer questions or just be a sounding board. So please don't hesitate reaching out.
Fantastic, ladies. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you.